Hello, my name is LoG and welcome to part 3 of this brother-to-brother solo tutorial. Much like the last video, this lesson will go over a faster lick, which means we will end the lesson with a backing track that gradually increases tempo for you to play over, much like one of my power-ups. If you enjoy this type of instructional material, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link below, and now let's get on to the lesson. As usual, let's start with the chord progression going on at this moment. In the previous video, we ended with that long string of 2 5s of G and B minor, and if you remember, we played the 2 5 of B minor, and then instead of resolving to B minor, we jumped up here and did this key change, and this first chord is the first chord of this new progression. The progression that's happening is exactly the same as everything we've just talked about. It's simply target chords with setup chords, so 2 5s or just 5s. So right here, there are going to be 2 target chords. The first one is B flat major, so B flat major 7 looks like that, or you can play it however you want. That's how I'll demonstrate it right here. And then the second target chord that happens later is C minor. So what we're doing here to set up the B flat major 7, we are simply playing its 2 and 5, which would be what? C minor is the 2, F dominant is the 5, right? Dominant 7 built on its 5, and then we play B flat. And then we do the same thing, setting up the C, except with just the 5. So here's our C minor. We will play the 5 chord, which is G7, dominant 7 built off of its 5th, and then C minor 7. We can also do it up here if we want to. There's the G7 and resolve to the C minor. So let me play that all one more time. So 2 5 of B flat, B flat, and then 5 of C minor, and then C minor. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, that's great, but that sounds nothing like the song, and you'd be correct, because there are a couple other things going on, some harmonic shenanigans going on that make it sound very different, but the core concept is still just that, exactly what we talked about. The first thing that's happening that makes it different is all of these chords, maybe except for that final C minor, which is really the first chord of the next video that we'll go over, but all the chords before that C minor all have F as their bass note, regardless of if that F is naturally in the chord or not. So for example, here's C minor 7, just a way that we can play it. Right, that's root, flat 3, 5, and then flat 7 of C minor, very typical. Instead of playing this chord with C in the bass, we're playing it with F in the bass. So instead of C, we have F in the bass, right? It's still kind of implying a 2 chord C minor, but the F is in the bass, changing the quality. It kind of gives it that super sus sound. So now it feels like F super sus or E flat with F in the bass. Similar thing is going on when we play the F dominant. So here's our F dominant. Of course, F is already the root of that chord, so we don't have to change anything. But it's not just a plain F7. It is an F7 containing some of those altered notes that you would usually play when moving to a minor chord, except we're doing it moving to a major chord. So for instance, instead of playing just standard F dominant or F dominant with like a 2 on top, they're playing F dominant with a sharp 2 or flat 3, sharp 9, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same note. That's the sound that they're playing. So the first chord is here, again, F in the bass. Next chord is here, again, F in the bass. And then the B flat major, major 7, is still the same thing like all the other chords, a chord with F in the bass. So instead of playing B flat like this, we are playing B flat major 7 with F in the bass the whole time. This voicing is like 5, 1, 3, 7. A much easier way to play it is probably like this. Same thing, 5, 1, 3, 7. F, B flat, D, and then A. Same voicing up here. Just to keep things up here, that's why I'm playing it like this. So let me recap. First chord, C minor 7 with F in the bass, creating that suspended sound. F dominant, still with F in the bass, just with some of those altered notes like sharp 9. B flat major 7, still with F in the bass, right there on the middle finger, right? Which is fine because F's already in the chord, so the voicing doesn't really change, or the quality of the chord, I should say, doesn't really change. And then the last chord is the trickiest one. This is the G7 that we're using to get to C minor, right? But what we're doing is not only are we playing a G7 with F in the bass, but it's also a G7 with some of those altered notes, 2 in particular. So instead of playing G major with a normal 5, we're playing G major with a sharp 5. So instead of that, we're dealing with this, and we have this sharp 2, flat 3, whatever you want to call it. So instead of playing normal G dominant, we're playing this figure, right? That's like G with 3, sharp 5, and then sharp 2. And then we're taking it one step further, again, keeping F as the low note. So instead of G here in the bass, we have F here in the bass. So it sounds like that. You can also think about it as like F minor 7 flat 5 with a 4 on top. That's another way you can think about it, which is a sound that's built into this whole kind of altered up a half step melodic minor stuff, which we'll talk about here in a second. So that's the chord that eventually takes us to the C minor, which starts the next video. So let me recap all of that. Here's the C minor with F in the bass, F dominant with some fancy notes, B flat major 7 with F in the bass, and then G dominant 7th with some fancy notes with F in the bass, like that. And the fingering I'm using is kind of barring here, pointer, middle, G strings underneath the bar, then pinky up top. You can also play like this if you wanted to. That's a really common way to play it, but that's what it looks like here on the starting on the A string. So yeah, that's the progression. Again, same concepts, right? This whole time, what are we really doing? We have a target chord, and we're just prepping or setting up that target chord with a 5 of or a 2/5 of, and just experimenting with what kind of dominant do we want to play? Do we want to play a dominant that's got some fancier notes in them? Do we want to play kind of a more standard dominant? They're experimenting, and you could do the same thing in your writing or playing, experiment with some of these sounds, and you can get some really cool stuff. So now let me play this progression over this tiny little chunk of the solo, and then we'll get onto the solo. Turn on my click track. Here we go. So with that progression in mind, let's go over this next part of the solo. Technically, we already kind of went over the beginning of it, which is this. It's kind of what we ended with in the last video, and that happens again over the F supersus chord. So we'll start right here. I'll play it pretty slow. You can see what it looks like. And that's the passage we'll do today. So the idea that's going on in this lick is exactly the same as what we did in the previous video. It's accessing, that up a half step melodic minor and then resolving to the target chord that we're moving to. Remember, this whole time we're moving towards B flat major 7. So what would be the melodic minor that builds into that chord? Again, the normal setup chord is the 5. So there's our B flat. The 5 is F dominant 7th. So that means we're going to move up a fret, play G flat melodic minor, ideas like that. And that's exactly what's going on right here. So that's our G flat. So we can look at that note as the root of this sound. And we do this. We start on the 2, walk chromatic back to the root, just like that. Dip down to grab the natural 6, then natural 7, and then 1, like that. So once we hit the 1, we're walking straight down or descending through that scale in the same exact way as we did in the previous lick. So that's the root up top, root, natural 7, natural 6, 5, flat 3, 2, 1, natural 7, natural 6, and then moving back a fret to land on this D, and that is the third of the target chord, in this case the B flat, at that moment. So let me play that passage one more time. Once we get there, we're now on the B flat. Fingering wise, it's up to you to figure out what's comfortable. I've been doing this. So kind of ring finger. That first part is pretty self-explanatory. This next part I've been going ring finger, middle, pointer, and then sliding back a fret, and then continuing pinky, ring, pointer, sliding back a fret. Again, you can practice this or play it however you want. That's how I'm doing it. So now that we're here and we've resolved to B flat, we're now going to continue through the B flat sound in a very similar way as we did in the previous video. So now we're on the 3, walking back 3, 2, trap the 1 in the same way as we did before. That's our root, right? That's our B flat. So 3, 2, trap the 1, play the note ahead of it, behind it, and then hit the 1. Walk up major 7 from here. So 1, 3, 5, 7. Then trap the 6 right there. So 7, the note ahead of the 6, back a whole step from the 6, and then the 6. So far, this should feel pretty similar to the previous one that we went through. So after major 7 again, trap the 6. We're on the 6. We walk up 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, and then we finish with a little B flat minor 7 arpeggio, which looks like this. Starting on the 5th, that's our root right there. That's the 5th. 5th, flat 7, 5th, flat 3, and then root, just like that. And I'm kind of doing a little bit of economy picking there. You can play this however is comfortable for you. Now, this note right before the arpeggio, when we walk up from the 6, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, in the recording, it sounds like it's being picked twice, but it also sounds like maybe it was just like an accidental, like, the pick grazed the string when he was moving to the next string, which made it sound like a pick attack. I don't really know exactly if that note was meant to be played twice. Personally, I kind of like it, so that's how I've been playing it, and that's how I'll play it for the backing track. But you can sit on the note if you'd rather do that, or whatever, sounds best to you. I kind of like the doubling of the notes, so that's what I'm doing. So let me recap all that one more time, nice and slow. Or, of course. So what are the musical concepts happening one more time? This first descending lick is all melodic minor built on the half step above the 5 chord towards the chord we're moving to. B flat is our target chord, F dominant is the 5, move up a fret. That's what we're playing our melodic ideas off of, G flat. That's what we're doing right here. We resolve to the B flat right there, and we continue playing B flat major with some light chromaticism, and then we finish with B flat minor up top. So you might be wondering, what B flat minor, how does that fit into what we're doing right here? Well, if you remember, the final chord that we talked about was the 5 of the C minor, right? So 5 of C minor was that G7. We were playing it like this. That chord that happens, that's the lick that goes with it. So how does B flat minor work over G dominant? Well, let's think about it. G dominant is right here. Again, we're moving to C minor, and we're playing it like this. But the core sound G minor, right? If we move up a half step and play melodic minor, as we've been doing pretty much every time we've hit a dominant chord in the solo, we have A flat melodic minor, which looks like this. If I just play the straight scale like this, that's A flat melodic minor, half step above the G, the chord that we're on, moving to the C minor. Well, look at what lives inside A flat melodic minor. Check it out. Here's the scale one more time. Look at this. There's a B flat. There's a B flat in this scale. There's the third of the flat 3, of B flat. There's the 5th of B flat, and there's the flat 7 of B flat, all inside of the scale. So within the sound that is A flat melodic minor lives a B flat minor 7. Actually, it lives a full B flat minor pentatonic sound. So that's one of those sounds that you can kind of play even though it's not really happening. It's a sound that I call a pretend chord, which I'm going to talk about in a later video in this series. The sound is A flat melodic minor, but we're pretending that it's B flat minor just temporarily. In reality, it's like the chord is really G7. We're pretending it's A flat melodic minor, and then from there we're pretending it's B flat normal minor 7, because that sound naturally lives inside of the A flat sound. It's one of those tricks that you can practice, and once you memorize it, you can pretty easily use it whenever you want. So that's kind of where that sound is coming from. Again, that's all over the G7. So if I sang that, so all those notes sound just fine over this chord. They even kind of sound good over the standard G7. Again, hitting some of those, fancy notes, the sharp 2s, the flat 2s, sharp 5s, etc. So that's where that lick is right there. So as we're practicing this lick and learning this lick, you might be wondering, man, this lick looks really similar to the one that we just did in the previous video. Not only is it really similar, it's actually exactly the same as that previous lick, starting at a certain point and ending at a certain point. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to take the lick that we're playing right here. We're starting this on the high string. I'm actually going to start it on the B string like the other lick. So if you remember the other lick, etc., that starts on the B string. I'm going to start this same one on the B string also, which would be way up here, which sounds like this. Again, here's the lick here, etc. Here it is up top. In no way is that easier to play up there, but that is what it would look like. So for visual purposes, I'm going to move both of these licks down an octave, much like I did in the last one, so you can see what's happening a little better. And so this lick right here, the one we just learned, now looks like this when it's down an octave on the B string. Right? Play a little better. So now let's take a look at what both of these licks look like side by side. The video on the left is the first fast lick that we went over in the last video, and the video on the right is the second fast lick that we went over today, of course put on the B string like I just mentioned. Both of these licks are down an octave, so they're visually easier to see, and I line them up so they'll start at the same moment. They both start differently, but once they each get to their sixth note and start the descent through the melodic minor sound, the lick is identical. This runs all the way up until you land on the third of the major chord with your ring finger on the G string. When I play them both at the same time, they definitely start different, but again, notice when they hit the sixth note of each lick, they start to move in perfect harmony. Not the most pleasant sounding harmony, but harmony nonetheless. Let's hear it one more time for giggles, twice as fast. What this means is the player absolutely has this lick built into his hands. He knows exactly how to use it, how to get into the lick, how to get out of the lick, how it feels, where to play it on multiple strings, etc. Ideas like these, or stock licks like these, are so valuable, especially if you want to play passages that are maybe a little faster and they're kind of hard for your brain to keep up. You can just let your hands handle those ideas while your brain plans ahead to play the next thing. It's also kind of nice for your brain to kind of take a break for a moment, let your hands do what they would do. You could come up to a particular chord progression and your brain can say, hands, execute lick, and the hands play the lick, and then when you resolve out of it, and you will know exactly how it will resolve because you've rehearsed the resolution, your brain can then say, okay, I know where I am, I know this lick ends on the fifth of the chord, on the third of the chord, whatever it is, and I can continue however I want. These are super valuable to have, especially if you're practicing some kind of concept that you're not super comfortable with mentally yet. You can just get it in your hands, play the lick over and over again to train your ears to know what that sound is, and then hopefully that sound will come out more naturally in your playing. So that's pretty much it for this lesson. Just like the previous lesson, because this is a faster lick, we're going to end with a backing track that gradually increases tempo. Again, 80 to 140. So learn the lick, do what you need to do to get it down. Come back to this point in the video, and we'll run that track again from 80 to 140. does it for part 3 of this brother-to-brother solo tutorial. If you enjoy this type of instructional material, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link below, and I'll see you all in the next part.